Hi everyone, this is Zoe Gilbert. Welcome to my unit project presentation for active learning for young children in science and social studies. The broad topic I had for my unit was Ohio Today, but I chose to focus on the smaller or more focused topic of restoring our state. So restoring Ohio. Now, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, go ahead and take a look at the image I have as the background for this slide, because I feel like this kind of encapsulates the theme of my unit just perfectly. So you can see there is a young child and they have their hands just around the earth. So the whole world is in their hands. What I'm going to be talking about in my unit is how individuals have rights and responsibilities, and they have the ability to influence their national and state government. So that's our social studies concept. So I just want students to realize in this unit that they have the ability to change the world, that they have the ability to shape the future of our earth. So that's where the topic restore our state comes from. All right, so let's just take a closer look at the details of how this unit is structured. You can see that there is an overarching social studies concept, but then there are also three different components that correspond to the three content areas that we are going to use to teach this social studies concept. So first we have a language arts lesson, and this is going to be focusing on the characteristics of a good citizen. And to do this, students are going to write an opinion essay about why it is important to recycle. So this connects to the social studies standards because when students realize why it is important to recycle, that connects back to the responsibilities of citizens in Ohio and the United States. And then also when they convey to others about why it is important to recycle, that connects to the ability to influence their state and national government. Once again, that capacity for change. All right, so our second component, our second lesson is math. And in this lesson, students are going to be representing and interpreting data. So students are going to be collecting data about litter, and then they are going to argue a solution to prevent litter in a specific location. So this connects to the overarching social studies concept because first of all, students are going out and once again making a difference in their community, and then they are showing that they realize that capacity to influence their state and national government because they were arguing a solution to prevent litter in that location. So they can argue that solution to a school administrator or to a government official, but someone who can help them make that change in their community. So finally, we have our third component, which is the science lesson. And this lesson is going to be focusing on how pollution can lead to things like acid rain, which in turn leads to weathering, which can affect areas in, for example, a local park where there's a bunch of old stone structures. So then students are going to create a promotional video to support an initiative to restore that area of the park that was affected by weathering and pollution. So once again, this connects to the social studies standards because students are trying to influence their state and national government, and they're trying to be responsible citizens. All right, so let's just take a closer look at the details of this lesson, of each of the lessons. So first of all, we have the language arts lesson, and this would be the first lesson, and it would kind of introduce students to the topic of being responsible citizens through recycling. So As our feature text for this lesson, we have one plastic bag, and this is the true story of Isatu Sese and the recycling women of the Gambia. So the goal for this lesson is for students to identify characteristics of a good citizen. So during the interactive read aloud, while I'm reading this book, I would just ask students, why is Isatu Sese an example of a good citizen? How does recycling help make someone a good citizen? And questions such as that to help students explain what it means to be a good citizen and how that connects to recycling. Next, students would write an opinion essay about why it is important to recycle, and then students would give an oral report of that essay. So for this lesson, I incorporated the 6E model. And one thing that's crucial in the 6E model is engaging students in the lesson as that first step. So I did that by using this book, One Plastic Bag, to kind of serve as the hook for the lesson. The Catholic connection for this lesson is that this lesson connects to the Catholic social teaching that we should be good stewards of the environment. All right, so our second lesson in this sequence would be math. And I titled this lesson, Analyze Your Impact, because students are going out, they're making a change in the community, and then they're analyzing the data that they've collected and using that to promote further change. So the learning objectives would be for students to represent and interpret data about the litter they've collected, and then to use that data to suggest a solution for preventing litter in that specific area. So the math standard I have relates to representing and interpreting graphs. For this lesson, students would be representing that data in bar graphs, and they would work in small groups to create bar graphs of the data they've collected. Finally, for this lesson, I used the backwards design model, which means that first you just want to identify the desired results. So I did that by selecting my math standard and realizing that I wanted students to be able to represent and interpret data on bar graphs. And then I kind of worked backwards and planned my learning activities, so step 2. And so I decided, well, I would teach that math concept through this community service activity of collecting litter. And then finally, you just determine acceptable evidence, which is simply your assessment. And for this lesson, that would just be analyzing students' bar graphs and their arguments for preventing litter in that specific location. And then you would just use that criteria to evaluate if students had met the learning objective or not. Finally, the Catholic connection. This lesson connects to the Catholic social teaching that caring for the environment is actually promoting the common good. All right, so the third lesson in the sequence is our science lesson, and it's focusing on how pollution and weathering can affect your community. So in this lesson, we would begin by students actually exploring the Gizmo, which we'll talk more about shortly. But then afterwards, students would go to a local park and they would identify examples of weathering in the local park. For example, maybe a set of stone stairs that were all eroded and were not really safe anymore. And then students would create a promotional video to advertise a way to restore that area. So maybe students would come up with a plan to restore the stairs so that they would be able to be used again. So this connects to the Catholic social teaching that protecting, that we have a responsibility to protect the environment and its resources. All right, so we're just going to take a closer look at the Gizmo for a second. So the purpose of this Gizmo is for students to explore the negative impact of pollution on the environment. So you can see here the basic setup. You would have a PVC pipe that drains into a large plastic container. And in that PVC pipe, you would stuff different filler materials such as trash, bacon grease, or colored water. And then you would actually have students interact with this Gizmo by pouring water through the PVC pipe and watching it pour out into the plastic container. So when students are looking at this, they can see that the water looks very murky, and just does not look good. Does not look like anything that you would want to touch or drink, obviously, or anything like that. So this would help students understand the negative impacts of pollution. And from this, you can discuss other negative impacts of pollution, such as pollution can cause acid rain, which in turn leads to weathering. So then you could transition to weathering and the field trip into Beatty Park. All right, so now we're just going to take a step back and reflect on the lesson as a whole and this experience of planning and executing an integrated social studies unit. So overall, one thing that I take away from planning this unit is the importance of other disciplines in teaching social studies. I think it was amazing that I was able to use math and language arts and science to teach a social studies concept in such an engaging and interactive way. Because I know that a lot of students are like me, and maybe social studies isn't their strongest subject, but if we are able to integrate other disciplines into these units, then I think that can be really beneficial for students who maybe don't see social studies as their strongest content area. Another takeaway I have from planning this unit is active learning. Once again, I really enjoyed brainstorming ways that I could incorporate active learning, group learning, and most importantly, community service opportunities into this unit. Because I think that a lot of students are hands-on learners and they really appreciate opportunities to see practical applications for what they're learning. So I think active learning is something that I really appreciated about planning this unit. Finally, this unit helped me understand the importance of collaboration and how it can really add so much quality to your lessons and their content and your instruction as a whole. So we actually collaborated with engineers to plan our Gizmo, and I also collaborated with a group of other education majors to plan my unit. We all had the same topic, and that really helped me brainstorm my ideas and also get peer feedback. A final point that involves the science lesson in particular is that science is for all learners. And I remember this point was made towards the beginning of the course. A lot of times people can think that students with disabilities or struggling learners don't really have the capacity for scientific inquiry. But I think that especially the Gizmo and our science lesson and the community service opportunities really helped show that scientific inquiry and science is for all students. It's not simply for gifted students, but rather students with disabilities, English language learners, struggling readers, all students should be able to participate in science. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.